This is a brief overview of Futato chapter 36. Now, as you can tell, this chapter is about the nifal. This is a new stem or a new verb pattern. So to this point we've had the kal, we've had the pl, and we've had the hifil, and now we're going to get the nifal. And just like with the hifil, especially hi, okay, you would often have forms prefixed by hey, and specifically hi in the perfect. The hifil perfect had that hey and then the I-class vowel. The nifal, you're going to have a prefixed noon, ni. You're going to have noon and then an I-class vowel, ni. So that is easy in and of itself, but the problem is you've already had an n prefix. Remember, in your kal imperfect, you have yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, tiktoli, ektol, yiktalu, tiktolna, tiktalu, tiktolna, niktol. Your first common plural kal imperfect actually has a ni prefix. So there's going to be some potential here for a little bit of overlap issue that might create a little bit of confusion. There will be telltale signs, though, with the nifal. Notice the spelling. Ni, and then an A-class vowel, your theme vowel, your thematic vowel. Prefix vowel, thematic vowel. Ni-a, nif-al. This is what's going to separate it. That pattern, the ni and then an A-class vowel, is going to help you distinguish this from your kal imperfect first common plural, niktol. Now the only place that, again, you're going to have an A-class vowel in the kal as a theme vowel in the imperfect is with a third guttural. Now, as with the hifil, nifal stems, nifal pattern, is going to create some nuance in meaning, some difference in meaning with verbs that are in the kal. Basically, the nifal form is the passive version of the kal. So here we have zakar, remember, and here we have be remembered. Again, it's passive. Cut, be cut. Given, be given. Guarded, or guard, be guarded. And you have the passive form of the same, lemma, meaning in the kal. So that's basically what the nifal does. Now, if we go down here, he says, well, sometimes it's best to translate it as reflexive. So here we have guard, and you could have be guarded, but you could also have guard himself. So he throws in the reflexive here. Now, if these terms are not familiar to you, active, passive, and reflexive, they need to be part of your thinking right away. So an active verb is where the subject of the verb performs the action. I hit the ball. Okay, I'm the subject, verb is hit. I'm the subject, I'm doing the hitting. Passive would be I was hit by the ball, or I am hit by the ball. The action of the verb comes back on me. Okay, I'm the passive recipient of the action of the verb. Reflexive is when I do an action, and because I'm doing the action, there's something about it that sort of comes back on me as a result of my own causation. I hit myself would be reflexive. Anytime you have reflexive, you're going to have something like himself, herself, itself, themselves, to bring this out in English. But that's the basic difference between active, passive, and reflexive. Reflexive is also known as middle. If you've had Greek grammar, that would have been the way you would have heard about it there. So if we come down here to nifal, what he does here is just gives you the forms. Now I have a separate video that condenses the forms of the nifal into one slide, what you need to remember, but it's definitely worthwhile, again, to read this closely, and if you have time, commit it to memory. But here you have katal, these are your normal kal perfect. Katal, katala, katalta, katalt, katalti, so on and so forth. The nifal will have the same endings. Look, the endings are the same, but you're going to have a ni prefix. Niktal, there's the A-class vowel. Nifal, niktal. Okay, and niktala, niktalta, niktalt, niktalti. Again, the endings are the same, you just have the ni prefix, and the plurals are consistent. Now the imperfect has its own specific pattern, and it's very easy to recognize. Cal, we have yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, so on and so forth. The nifal pattern is yikatel. Watch. You have under the prefix, and the prefixes are always the same, imperfect prefix. You have hirik followed by dagesh and then comets. Hirik, dagesh, comets. Write it down, memorize it, highlight it, know it well. Whenever you look at this form, just like we've been parsing all the while. Yod, well, is that yod a prefix? Well, it could be. Do I have a discernible lemma? Yes, I do. Katal, because I know my vocabulary. So I know now that it's an imperfect. This is a prefix, so what's my next pattern? Hirik, dagesh, commas. Boom, nifal. That's what it's going to be. It's what it's always going to be. Now down here, because we have a guttural with aleph, it's segol, dagesh, comets, but it's still I-class. I-class, dagesh, comets, boom, nifal. That's what it is. So the imperfects are really easy to spot. Now, imperatives, again, he shows you the nifal imperfect. So we've got here the prefix, hirik, dagesh, comets, tikatel. The imperative is absolutely the same, except instead of the imperfect prefix and then hirik, dagesh, comets, we have a hey. Hey prefix, hirik, dagesh, comets. Now, you say, oh, I don't know how am I going to avoid confusing that with the hifil? Because the hifil has that hey prefix too. Hifils will never have hirik, dagesh, comets following, ever. So that is how you distinguish between hifil and nifal in the imperative, and then down here in the infinitives and infinitive absolute. You have the hi plus, you have hey, hirik, dagesh, comets. Hey, hirik, dagesh, comets. Hey, hirik, dagesh, comets. It's always going to be that way. Now, this next thing is the only thing I think is potentially confusing about the nifal, and that is the first form here. Masculine singular, nifal participle is niktal. Now that looks an awful lot like, let's scroll back up here, an awful lot like niktal. The only difference is in the perfect niktal, third masculine singular, has a patak, A-class vowel, and down here in the participle, it's comets. That's the only difference. Other than that, your endings are going to be consistent for participles. So you have participle endings, ni on the front, it's a nifal participle. But the masculine singular form, again, looks very much like the cal perfect, the nifal perfect third masculine singular form. So those two nifals, your third masculine singular perfect and your masculine singular participle, the only difference between them is the type of a vowel in the theme vowel. Cohortative, of course, the pattern's the same. I-class, hirik, dagesh, comets with comets hey on the end. That's what a cohortative has. It appends the comets hey. Gessive, again, short vowel form, but this is going to look, again, look at your imperfect, yikatel. They're going to be identical. So you just have to tell by context which one you want to see it as, the gessive or the imperfect. And then vav relative, of course, will have the vav appended out front. So that is chapter 36 by way of overview. So what you need to start again doing is getting together a list of tells, adding to your notes, and again I have a separate video coming up if you haven't already seen it, just overviewing, sort of reviewing what the tells are, what the signs are of the PL, the hifil, and now the nifal. So please make sure you go watch that. That's the end of the overview for Futato chapter 36.